My first question for you is who are you and what are your responsibilities and duties to the bricklayers and allied craft?
Ken Coghill. I'm the business manager and financial secretary for Local One Bricklayers of Alberta. I was elected in 2022, replaced our former business manager, Alan Ramsey, who was our manager for 21 years. I joined the local right out of high school in 1988. I graduated high school. I joined the union 2 weeks after I graduated high school. I signed my apprenticeship as a bricklayer. So I joined in 1988. Been around a long time. I worked many years as a bricklayer, mostly in the refractory sector. 30 years working as a refractory bricklayer, foreman, supervisor, superintendent throughout the field. And then I became the business manager in 2022, spearheaded the new direction that we're going in. We recently opened a training facility and we moved on from our office building downtown to 20,000 square foot training facility and offices, right?
So you got into this shortly after high school. You've been in the union for a significant amount of time. Your family, like, were they ever in the trades or what did they do? Or did you, like, you follow your father's footsteps like a lot of people may have?
My dad was a bricklayer. My uncle was a bricklayer as well. My uncle was a member of Local One Alberta since the late 1960s when he moved from Scotland. So he was a stonemason in Scotland, is what my uncle was. And so when he relocated to Alberta, he joined Local One Alberta and was a bricklayer here in Alberta and kind of spearheaded my interest in being a bricklayer.
So as a business manager, what is it that you do? What is it that you oversee? And like, what is it that you contribute or bring to the table for your local here?
I run the day-to-day business of Local One, from paying the bills to hiring our new organizers and our brand new training coordinator, Nick Peters. So I hired Nick, brought him on as our new training coordinator. And I take care of the day-to-day business of Local One.
Can you explain the like I guess the hierarchy or the tier system within a union, like from like a business manager, because you kind of are almost essentially at the top of this the system, and then how it trickles down and where it goes to.
So I know that different unions do it in a different way. So we at Local One, the business manager is the person that runs the day-to-day business of the union. We also have our executive board, which consists of our president. We have 3 vice presidents. So we have a vice president for the North, a vice president for the South, and then we have a vice president for the tile setters. And we also have 2 recording secretaries as well on our executive board. So that's our executive board, which I go to for any major decision. So if there's a major decision, I don't make it on my own. I go on and bring it up with the executive board. If it's something that pertains to the membership or that the membership all needs to vote on as well, then we'll bring it to monthly membership meetings and we'll vote on it.
Is it just like a monthly meeting or?
So I have a monthly executive board meeting and then I have a monthly general meeting, other than July and August when we take a break in the summer. Those are the only 2 months we won't have the meetings. So what we recently did was we had an amendment to the Constitution, which by the union rules has to be read out at 3 consecutive meetings, and the membership votes on the 3rd meeting to either adopt or reject that amendment to the Constitution. So we amended our Constitution recently because our Constitution used to run for the executive board, you used to have a trade ticket issued in the province of Alberta. And that was it. That was what our Constitution said. So we recently, this spring, changed our Constitution to say a trade ticket issued in the province of Alberta, or to have been a resident and active member of Local One Alberta, living in the province of Alberta with a red seal trade certificate from anywhere in Canada. Now you're also allowed to run as an executive. We changed the wording in our Constitution to be more current and understand that our members move around this nation. You might transfer in from Ontario, you might transfer in from British Columbia, and that we do have right now, especially maybe across this country, a lot of tradesmen returning to the province of Alberta because the cost of living is a little bit lower in Alberta and the wages might be a little bit higher, especially in the industrials.
Have you noticed that flux, like people coming back from like let's say Ontario? And has there been a bit of a strain on you guys for like, I'm looking for work, you guys have work?
So we've definitely, in the last year, 2 years, we've had a lot of members transferring back to Alberta. recently have a couple guys that transferred in from Toronto, and it was the biggest reason that they left. It wasn't because they didn't like Toronto. It wasn't because of anything other than that it was costing them $3,000 a month to rent a one-bedroom apartment. Okay, and when you're paying $3,000 a month to rent a one-bedroom apartment, and then all of a sudden you move from Toronto to Alberta, and Buddy came into me and goes, my rent's less, and I've got a 2,000 square foot house that I'm renting now. The cost of living in some of the major centers around our country is very high, especially again in Toronto and Vancouver. The cost of living in those cities is immense right now. And the wages aren't higher. So
See it a lot on social media, and people are always wanting to come to me being like, hey, are you hiring? Do you know someone that's hiring? Like, I'm not a recruiter. And
right.
like, it's like, that's very hard for me to answer questions. But if someone was in Toronto, New Brunswick, wherever it is, or wanting to get into the trade, right? Are you guys hiring? Are you guys looking? Do you have room for people, or is it you guys are flooded and then
We're one of those unique trades that every single year we run out of bricklayer. The spring comes, and here we are, end of March. And 2 weeks from now, I won't have one bricklayer available from the province of Alberta. All of my members will be at work, and I'll be looking to bring in anywhere from 200 to 500 bricklayers from across Canada. Where our members will be all working. And we're so busy that our members also get to the point every year, the spring will end, and a lot of members, they'll want to take the whole summer off, go to the lake, back to work in September. And once again, by the end of the first week of September, we'll have exhausted every bricklayer in Alberta. We'll be out of bricklayers, and once again in the fall, we'll be looking to bring another 200 to 500 bricklayers into the province to help us out to get to middle of November, when the turnaround's all done.
well, as a scaffolder for myself, our busiest time, like usually when everything kicks off, it's spring, right? And like with the shutdowns, outages, whatever you want to call them. Once those are in full swing, spring, summer, we start to slow down a little in the fall. Winter, unless you're on maintenance, but the outages come to a screeching halt unless like a boiler cracks or something goes absolutely wrong. So is that the same for you guys, or is it different? Because like there's obviously industrial, residential, and commercial.
Right.
So what is your guys' busy times, and when can people expect things to get slower? Because one thing I always tell people, if you're going to get into the trades, you're going to get into the oil and gas sector, budget for your slow months and whatever you make in your overtime season.
Right.
Put that shit aside because you never know how long that slow season's going to be.
But I've been around a long time, so it was unique when I started. You learned that right away. That we're seasonal workers, so you learn to budget your money and realize you don't want to be those guys that live paycheck to paycheck per se. But you learn to budget your money, but it's also, it's Alberta, feast or famine, right? You get to the middle of March, end of March, and then it gets absolutely crazy until the end of June. It'll be just flat out, and you beg for a day off. Basically, there's not a lot of time from one shutdown to the next. You live out of a suitcase, right? And then there's a little slowdown in the summertime because just like everybody else, the plant managers and the operators and all these guys go on holidays as well during those summer months. So there'll be less turnarounds in July and August, but you get to the end of August and there you are, Labor Day weekend happens, and then it goes crazy again. And it'll be like that until the end of November, and then we'll slow down in the winter. Once again, you only want bricklayers out at your refinery in the wintertime if you absolutely have to, because you got heated up, and there's nothing that we can do if it's frozen. Our materials do not adapt well to freezing, so it does put a lot of strain on the refinery or even in the residential sector to have bricklayers out when it's minus 40 outside. It's going to cost you a lot to heat it up and make sure you can cure that material before. Can't have it freezing. There's a lot of water in there. So, so we are very seasonal. It's a seasonal job, no matter if you're commercial, if you're industrial. I guess our tile setters will be the ones that work year round for sure. Definitely still some of the commercial bricklayers because a lot of brickwork, a lot of masonry is on the inside of the buildings as well. So we do a lot of work inside as well. So there's there is opportunities to work around with a lot of our commercial guys.